Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome to Books That Make You. I'm Desiree Duffy, your host, and we are talking about books that make you witness grief and maybe understand better how to cope with loss and trauma. You know, the more time that we spend on this planet, the more lives that we see pass. One of the cruelest aspects of getting older involves experiencing the loss of loved ones. How can we learn about our grief and help others while they are in the throes of their own? Our guest today is Holly Margl. She is the award-winning author of Witnessing Grief, Inviting Trauma and Loss to our coaching conversations, an Enneagram Perspective. And she is more than a name in the coaching realm. She is a beacon for those who are navigating the waters of grief and trauma and the Enneagram. With the prestigious titles of International Coaching Federation Master Certificate Coach, whoa, that's a mouthful, and an Advanced Certificate Mentor Coach to her name, Holly's expertise is recognized around the world. Her journey began at the University of Minnesota, where she delved into alcohol and drug counseling and psychology. However, a fateful intersection with coaching and the Enneagram in 2011, while teaching at a local college, transformed her path. And we're going to learn about that. She is committed to growth, and Holly never stops absorbing with an impressive array of coaching and Enneagram courses under her belt. Holly, I hope I got that right. You have so many titles and you've done so much in this realm. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Desiree. It is my privilege to be here with you and all you've done. Look at everything you do. Thank you for all you do.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Okay, so this is a heavy subject, and I wanna delve a little bit into. Can you help us set the stage? Can you tell us, please, the backstory to your award-winning book?
Yes, thanks for asking. The backstory, briefly, is in 2018. In a matter of just a few months, my dad and one of my children died, sending me into a new orbit. I'm not the same person, it's safe to say that. And I found out really fast that people, especially after child loss, don't know how to talk about that with folks. A lot of platitudes. And when COVID hit, coaches were asking for help, and there isn't any training for talking about grief and trauma, and yet it was everywhere, and it continues. So I decided I'm going to write a book to help coaches in this endeavor so that they can show up with the folks that are suffering with grief, in feeling heard, having a safe space.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Can you talk about, and maybe I'm saying this wrong, the Enneagram Perspective?
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that? Yeah. Can you?
Yeah, thank you. To put it briefly, the Enneagram is it's a roadmap to human consciousness. I use it, and its essential purpose is for helping each of us know ourselves better, so that we can see how we get in our own way from being present in our everyday lives. If you think about how we drive a car, we're going to the grocery store, we're not thinking about the act of driving. Our body just knows how to do it. We spend most of our mental and emotional energy going through the same kind of patterns and not putting a lot of effort into being present in our current situation. So the Enneagram helps us see those doorways and the patterns so that we can learn how to enter new doorways and make new patterns.
Now, you help other coaches. I'm curious, we'll talk about that, but I'm curious first, what do you say to somebody who's experiencing grief? And especially being through what you have, and my deepest, condolences there. And I want to touch on that too, because we talk about the platitudes and I just gave you one. So I'm curious from a personal perspective, what advice do you have for somebody who's experiencing grief? And I'm going to follow that up with also, how do you suggest that people approach that? What are we to say when we ourselves know how devastating that is, but then you just search, you struggle for the right words?
Yeah. So we're all well-meaning in this.
Mm-hmm.
For someone who's grieving, what's essential I found is when folks are experiencing the same kind of loss, or let's say it's even cancer, when they're around other folks having the same experience, it's a really safe space. And there doesn't need to be any talking to just have an energy field that feels safe. My hope and what I want for folks that are grieving is to know that they're not alone and they're not walking around with a sign on their head saying whatever loss or trauma they've experienced, it doesn't define them. And it is also part of them that has earned respect just in the fact that it's there. The other thing, and I guess we can get into this more if you'd like, one of the things I train coaches on is there is a difference between a person and their story or their experiences. When we have traumatic grief, we can feel like it is us. When I lost my son, I'm a mom whose son died, and that's it. And it can feel very isolating. So number one, grievers are not alone. And it's important to find folks that are safe, that can be with you without trying to change it or fix it or make you feel better. Just they're comfortable sitting in that pain. And recognizing there's a human being behind their experience. And that's what we all deserve to touch on with each other, is human being to human being, not story to story. I'm not grieving, you are grieving. I've had trauma, you haven't had trauma. We're human beings at our core, and that's what I'm trying to make the connection with.
I think that is so poignant. I go back a long, long ways when I lost my father as a tween. And I was defined at that point in time as the kid who lost her dad. And I was treated with kid gloves at school and, all of our circles. I was just like this precious little thing that you couldn't talk to about anything else. So I can identify with that. I can't imagine, as somebody who is also now a mother and a grandmother, losing, somebody like you have. And it seems to me that at no matter what stage in life you are, such losses are going to affect one very differently. Do you work with coaches and others on that as well? Because a child experiencing loss, a teenager, a young adult, and then much like I discussed in our intro, because I realize, the older we get, the more we see and experience this, right? It's one of the cruel factors of getting older. So I'm just kind of curious if at different stages in one's life, there's different approaches and different things and different bits of advice you might have.
I'm going to say no. And follow it up with a question for you. Thank you for sharing what you did. When you think back to losing your dad and how you were treated, how would you like to have been treated?
Exactly. Because at that time, being just another kid on the playground would have been awesome. And it really resonates because you talk about being defined, and knowing that that is a universal thing is, I think, powerful for people to know and realize that it's all the same at no matter which stage you're at. Right?
Well, yeah. And we have this habit these days of othering. So it's them and not me. We're all going to experience grief. And if you think of our world right now, we can't escape it. A lot of people try, but where's the humanity in that? I mean, we cannot escape feeling grief. It's going to show up differently in everybody, yes, but again, at our core, we're human beings, and the events don't define us. How do we find ourselves amidst grief, whether we're with someone who's grieving or we are grieving? Where are we in that process of being present for loss?
When people get together who can, you talk about having that safe space, what are some of the things that you recommend they discuss as a group to work together?
Just to clarify, do you mean grievers?
Yes.
Okay. If a group wanted to get together and say nothing at all, that would be okay. Mm-hmm. I'll share a quick story with you if that's okay.
Please.
Okay, thank you. I attended some child loss grief groups after my son died. And I say some because I did try several. And I remember one in particular, the first time in there, the therapist that was facilitating, the first thing she said to me was, "How did he die?" Now, I have coach training, so I know that this is a completely unhelpful question. And if you think about it for just one moment, what does it matter? She asked that question because she was curious. It was not for my process, for my place at that time. So for grievers to be, and folks that are grieving, like even you as a younger person, your father died. That's the fact. Did it weigh more or less depending on how he died? No. Your father died. That's what mattered. So when grievers get together, they're not focusing on the things that somebody else might want to talk about. Maybe it's just silence. It's an energy. Maybe they do want to process what happened to their loved one. Maybe they don't. Maybe they want to hear about yours. But there's no judgment. And that's the important piece, is that there's no judgment when it's someone else who's experiencing it. And it can feel like judgment when it's coming from outside, especially depending on, if you think about suicide or an overdose, there's judgment that comes with that. That's an extra layer of pain for a family member to deal with when they know that there's some sort of evaluative process going on in the other's mind, potentially, depending on how their loved one died.
Exactly. And it was suicide. So it was an extra layer, especially at that age. Can we talk about more specifically, and we've touched on it, your coaching? How does that work? How do you help other coaches? What do you do with them?
Oh, thanks for asking. I work with a lot of new coaches. So they're just starting out their certifications. I mentor them specifically to pass a certain exam with the coaching company that I work with, and with coaches that are working toward an International Coaching Federation certification. The most important, so there's checklists of competencies that they have to meet or don't need to not do or to do very specifically. And coaching is not a checklist of here's what you do in this order. It's about a presence. It's about being. It's about recognizing what I truly like to say. It's meeting another person, essence to essence, getting the story out of the way and hearing who that person is, who they want to be. And then it's asking them questions that help them move toward whatever destination they are heading for, whether that's grief or trauma or a relationship that they're talking about. With coaches, I teach them those core competencies and also how to see the who instead of the what in the conversation. So connecting with human contact.
That makes so much sense. And I have to imagine for coaches and folks like you in this realm, when you're making those connections, that has to be not only something that can weigh heavy on one, but an incredible privilege as well.
Mm.
Do you have any thoughts, or do you talk to them about when they're taking on and, making those connections? That's powerful and that's amazing, but that's got to present some unique feelings and emotions for them as well, I'd imagine.
It can, and this is where boundaries come in. And thank you for using the word privilege. It is one of my favorites. I wholeheartedly believe that if we could all hold in mind, like right now, it is a privilege that you're sitting here with me. And I don't lose sight of that. And that brings an appreciation that we don't bring it into our conscious awareness. So, okay, if I may use your example again, thank you again for trusting all of us with that very personal information about how your father died. Now, if you maybe remember the experience, it was your experience. And there might have been some people that want to make it better for you, or they want to fix it, or they want to tell you it's going to get better, you'll get through it, or whatever advice they're going to give you. And maybe, like with me, deep down, it's like, this is my grief. This is what I have left of my loved one. Don't take that away from me. It's mine. So I talk with coaches about, and this is the boundary piece, if someone's suffering grief or trauma or loss, or they lost their job, or they're moving and it's a choice, but they're walking away from a home that has memories. That's their experience. And we don't have any right to take that from them. It's not for us to take on their feelings or to take the experience or make it better. Mm-hmm. We get to be with them and allow them to have it and to experience it. Then, I'm talking to folks all the time and I never feel burnt out. And I think, I didn't do this on purpose, but I think that's it from my own experience, learning this is mine. Quit trying to take it away. I can be with someone who's in a lot of pain, but I'm not taking it from them. I'm energetically there with them while we're in that shared space. And then when we part, they get theirs and I get mine. So that's what I also hope to share with coaches, that there's a boundary there. And yes, there's empathy. Empathy does not mean there's a lack of boundaries. There's a lot of respect in you have yours and I have mine.
That's really powerful and poignant. And I feel like it just speaks again to everything that you have put out there and your methodology and what you have put into your book. I want to segue now and talk a little bit more very specifically about your book. It's an award-winning book. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
I'm curious, and I think this is especially true for you. I think it's true for so many writers, even fiction writers. A lot of times writing in itself is a type of therapy. Being able to put those words out there, to take your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, and articulate them onto a page, even if it's journaling or something that you don't even share with somebody, that process has a lot of power in and of itself. I'm curious, as you were writing your book, is there anything that you discovered? Something that came to mind, something you felt you learned about yourself or your process in writing your book? What did Holly discover?
I appreciate this question. I didn't discover it right away. What I realized probably a year afterward is that the process of writing the book keeps Nicholas and Bob, my son and my dad, alive. Their names are out there. They're going to continue to be seen. And I get to talk about them. I think that was probably an unknown motivation for writing the book.
And what about thinking about the future? Are you going to write other books? Is there anything that we can look forward to from you, Holly, as time goes on?
Thank you for asking. I didn't, when I wrote that book, it came out of, I want to help coaches know how to talk about this. I had no plan for a second book. My publisher had said, there's a lot of ways you could add another one. And I thought, let's just get through this one. So at this point, I felt inspired at that point. There was a lot going on, and it was just, I'm just doing this. Nothing has popped for me as far as the topic goes, something I want to write. That's not to say I won't, because I didn't know I was going to write one at all. So that's open. At this point, I'm really enjoying processes like this, where I have the opportunity to talk to folks and talk about grief, make it safer for the grievers. And especially now, again, there's so much going on in our world. There is grief everywhere, and there are ways we can support one another and be present to what's happening in the world. That's what I want to continue doing, and training coaches, working with coaches on, they are screaming for help me talk about this topic. So that's where my focus is right now, is really in staying immersed in the coaching field and supporting coaches who want to know how to show up better.
It's wonderful too. This often happens once somebody writes a book, is it becomes part of a platform. And I know that word gets thrown about a lot in the bookish and literary world, but you're taking that and using that, like you said, to help other coaches and speaking. So we've touched on your speaking, but you're doing a lot of speaking engagements as well. What does that feel like, standing up on stage and talking openly about this?
It's new territory. I will say that. It's I never imagined it. In fact, this is the truth. I remember my publisher saying, once you write a book, people want you to talk. And I said, no, I don't have to talk to anybody. I wrote the book, so I don't have to talk to anybody at all. Right. And here I am. So She was right. I'm getting more used to it. I can't say being up in front of people is my favorite thing. I don't know if that's normal for authors or not, but it's not my favorite thing. I'm very comfortable one-on-one in front of people. One of the tenets of coaching is that we are not experts of anyone. Everybody is an expert unto themselves, and we facilitate a conversation. So I avoid saying I'm an expert at anything always. And so getting in front of folks, I guess I'd rather have conversation like this than getting up and giving instruction. I like the invitation to connect with folks more than just here's some information for you.
I think that's universal among a lot of authors and writers. It is. A lot of times the reason they are authors is because they want to put something out there, but they don't necessarily want to or feel the need to step on the stage in a big, powerful way. That tends to be a different type of creative. And there's just so many different ways that we can express ourselves as creatives. And when you're a writer or an author, you tend to be a little bit more on the reserved side. But I think it's fabulous, Holly, that you are stepping out there and speaking. And when you do that, do a show like this, whether it's an interview or you're literally taking the stage and speaking in front of a group, that you're able to share that and touch so many in a way. And, speaking like this too, you're right. Because it's a conversation. It's you and it's me. And I guess there just happens to be a lot of people out there that are listening in on the conversation. And I like to think that it's like a show like this is we're having a conversation over coffee. I got my cup right here. It's actually tea.
Yeah, me too. Tea. Yeah.
Tea. Especially at this time of the day.
Right.
Switch over to tea. Yeah. But those that are able to listen in are there because they feel this intimate connection. And at any rate, I really appreciate you having this type of conversation with me. I'm going to ask you a question next. And I ask this question a lot, so I don't know if you saw it on some other shows. It's one of my favorites, but I think it brings out a perspective in everybody's book. Holly, your answer cannot be Oprah. You cannot say Oprah, all right?
Okay.
If you could hand your book to anybody in the world and be guaranteed that they were going to read it and digest it, who would you hand your book to? What
a fantastic question. Well, I would have to say Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney. I love that. Okay. Do tell why.
I think he's been an idol of mine for a long time, and he's been through a lot in his years. I would love to have a conversation with him about grief and his experiences. There's so much to learn from other people. Mm-hmm. I would love to know more about the wisdom that is in his head and in his heart. Learn about his experiences. And yeah, I just think that there's a lot there that I would love to learn.
And well, the show, this platform, hopefully we put that out into the universe, and maybe Paul will hear that. Yeah. He'll grab a copy of your book. All right, Holly, this has been such a fabulous conversation. I know people want to learn more. Where can they go to find out more about you, find your book, and find out more about your coaching and possible speaking opportunities? Can you give us your details?
Yeah, I would say the quickest, easiest, if you just go to witnessinggrief.com. There are links for all the social media there. Connect with me, pushing a button, emails in there. That's probably the easiest way.
Excellent. Holly Margl, thank you so much for joining us today. I enjoyed our conversation so much.
Thank you. It has been my privilege. And again, thank you for sharing with us in this conversation some of your story. It means a lot.
My pleasure, truly. And thank you, everybody, for listening to Holly and I and watching us talk if you're on YouTube and joining this very special conversation. Please make sure that you follow us on our website and our social media. The website is booksthatmakeyou.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok as well. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.